The penthouse stretched across downtown Los Angeles like a temple carved from glass and steel. Stephanie Lago stood in the living room, her elegant white blazer still buttoned from a dinner party where she'd smiled at strangers for 3 hours while her husband worked his phone. Min Jae hadn't said her name once that night. It was nearly 1 a.m., and he still hadn't looked up from his laptop. 4 years. 4 years of marriage that had begun with his father's approval and eroded into two people who lived in the same space but never touched. Stephanie pressed her fingers against her stomach, feeling the truth that had been growing there for 3 months. A baby. The one thing that might have saved them. The news that should have sent her running to tell him instead sat lodged in her throat like glass. She had tried 3 times to say the words. 3 times he had chosen Soul over her, and tonight, watching him swipe her message away, unread, unanswered, erased, something inside her finally went silent. Not broken, just done. Before we continue, I need to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments, and if you haven't hit subscribe yet, you're going to regret missing what happens next. Don't let Stephanie's story unfold without you. The morning light hit the floor-to-ceiling windows at exactly 6:47 a.m., flooding the penthouse with that particular shade of gold that real estate agents called breathtaking, and Stephanie had learned to call lonely. She opened her eyes to find Min Jae's side of the bed already empty, sheets pulled tight like he'd never been there at all. She used to reach across, those first few months hoping to find warmth. Now she knew better. The penthouse sprawled across the top 2 floors of the building, 4,200 square feet of carefully curated emptiness. Everything in it cost more than most people made in a year, and none of it belonged to her. Not really. The Eames chairs no one sat in. The Rothko on the wall that Min Jae's interior designer had selected, the kitchen that had been featured in Architectural Digest, where Stephanie ate yogurt standing up because sitting at that 12-person marble table alone felt too pathetic. She found him in his study, already dressed, typing something on his laptop with that focused intensity he reserved for work. Never for her. "Morning," she tried. He didn't look up. 4 years. And 4 years of and I'll be late tonight, and sleeping in the same bed with someone who flinched when she touched him. 4 years since his father had basically orchestrated their marriage like a business merger, which, she supposed, it had been. The Parks needed someone respectable, American, socially adept. Stephanie had needed, well, she'd been 23 and stupid enough to think handsome and mysterious meant the same thing as capable of love. She'd told herself he just needed time, that underneath the ice was someone warm, someone who would eventually let her in. Her mother had said the same thing. "Give him space, honey. He's from a different culture. He'll come around." Her friends had been less optimistic, but she'd stopped listening to them around month 6. And right after the wedding, when she'd realized her husband didn't know whether she took coffee or tea, it was tea. English breakfast, 1 sugar, splash of milk. She'd told him 11 times. "I'm meeting Claire for lunch," she said, trying to fill the silence that pressed against her like water. "That new place in Silver Lake?" "Fine. You could come, if you're free." He finally looked up, and for half a second she saw something flicker across his face. Confusion, maybe, like she'd suggested something absurd. "I have meetings." "Right, of course." She left him there, walked back through the museum they called home, past the fiddle leaf fig tree that a service watered every Tuesday, past the bookshelf filled with books Min Jae had never read, but that looked impressive. Past the wedding photo his mother had insisted they display, both of them smiling at the camera, neither of them looking at each other. In the bathroom, she stared at herself in the mirror, 27 years old, still pretty, she supposed, though she felt older than her mother some days. She'd kept herself small for him, quiet, undemanding, had stopped wearing red because he'd once said it was too much, had learned to exist in the negative space of their marriage, filling in the gaps he left behind. What was her favorite color? He'd never asked. It was yellow, the warm kind, like honey and sunlight, like the opposite of this place. Her phone buzzed. Claire, confirming lunch, adding 3 exclamation points and a heart emoji because Claire still believed in enthusiasm, still believed Stephanie's marriage might magically fix itself through positive thinking and couples yoga. Stephanie typed back a response, hit send, and looked around the penthouse again. 4,200 square feet. She'd measured once, pacing it out on a particularly bad day. Funny how you could have so much space and still feel like you were suffocating. Behind her, she heard Minjai's study door close, heard his footsteps. He walked quietly, always had, like he was trying not to be noticed in his own home. The elevator dinged. He was leaving without saying goodbye. Also not new. She walked to the window, pressed her forehead against the glass, looked down at the city spread out below like a promise someone had forgotten to keep. Somewhere down there, people were fighting and laughing and actually touching each other. And somewhere down there was real life. Up here was just her, and the silence, and the growing certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake. Her phone buzzed again. Not Claire this time. A number she didn't recognize. A message that made her pulse stutter. "We need to talk about your husband." I tried 3 times to tell him I was carrying his child. The first attempt came on a Tuesday night. I'd made reservations at Myeongdong Sikdang, that tucked-away Korean place in Gangnam where we'd celebrated our engagement 3 years ago. The same corner booth, the same crispy pajeon we'd shared, while planning a future that now felt like it belonged to different people. I wore the emerald dress he'd once said made my eyes look like sea glass. He arrived 20 minutes late, tie loosened, and that familiar crease between his eyebrows that meant he'd been arguing with investors. But he smiled when he saw me, that devastating smile that had made me believe in second chances when we'd reconnected after my father's death. "You look beautiful," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I'd rehearsed the words a dozen times. "Jay, I have something to tell you. We're going to have a baby. Simple, direct. The way he preferred information delivered." The waitress brought out the banchan, and I watched him reach for the kimchi, the same automatic gesture I'd witnessed 1,000 times. This was the man I'd chosen, the man whose child I carried. "So," I started, my fingers trembling slightly as I reached across the table toward his hand. "I need to—" His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. And I saw something shift in his face, that particular tightening around his jaw that meant it was work. "1 second," he murmured, taking the call mid-bite of pajeon. 1 second became 5 minutes, then 10. I sat there, watching him negotiate in rapid Korean with someone in London about semiconductor shipments, watching my carefully constructed moment dissolve into the familiar white noise of his empire. When he finally hung up, he looked at me apologetically. "Sorry, what were you saying?" The words felt too big now, too important to squeeze into the leftover minutes of his attention. "Nothing," I said. "It can wait." The second attempt came that Saturday morning. I'd made his favorite breakfast, fluffy American pancakes with real maple syrup, the expensive kind from Vermont. Sunlight streamed through our kitchen windows, and turning everything golden and hopeful, he was home. We had time. I set the plate in front of him, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Jay, can we talk about something important?" He looked up from his phone, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen for in graduate school, the one who used to stay up until 3 a.m. debating philosophy and kissing me between theories about consciousness. "Actually," he said, standing up, his pancakes untouched, "I forgot I have a meeting. Kim needs me to review the Singapore contracts before Monday." "It's Saturday," I said quietly. I know. He kissed the top of my head absently, already mentally gone. "We'll talk tonight, I promise." But that night, he came home after midnight, smelling like the office, coffee and printer toner and ambition, and climbed into bed without waking me. The third attempt broke something inside me I didn't know could break. He came through the door at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday with Sujin, his assistant, a woman whose competence I'd always admired until I realized she'd become more of a partner to him than I was. They were laughing about something, their heads bent together over an iPad, finishing each other's sentences the way we used to. I was standing in the kitchen, one hand pressed against my still flat stomach where our secret grew. "Jay," I said, my voice cutting through their conversation. "I really need to talk to you. It's important." He looked at me, and there was irritation in his eyes, actual irritation that I'd interrupted whatever momentum they'd built working late together. And then he did it. He held up one finger, one single finger telling me to wait, to be quiet, and to understand that whatever he was doing was more important than anything I could possibly need to say. His phone was ringing. Soul again, always soul. And he answered it without even excusing himself, turning his back to me as he walked toward his office. Sujin trailing behind him with her perfect competence and her perfect understanding of his empire. That finger destroyed me, because I suddenly saw my entire future. Trying to tell him about doctor's appointments while he held up a finger. Trying to share the baby's first kick while he held up a finger. Watching our child learn that mommy's words weren't as important as daddy's phone calls. I stood in that kitchen, my hand still pressed against my stomach, and felt my marriage crumble into ash. The question wasn't whether to tell him anymore. The question was whether I could survive staying long enough to try a fourth time. The notification lit up his phone at 2:47 p.m. Marcus didn't even look at it. He was 3 spreadsheets deep into quarterly projections, the kind of mind-numbing work that required just enough focus to block out everything else. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Outside his office window, the city moved in fast-forward while he sat perfectly still, chasing numbers that would be obsolete by next quarter anyway. Across town, Sarah stood in their bedroom doorway, phone clutched in both hands like a grenade. She'd recorded the message 4 times already, deleted each one. Too angry, too sad, too much like she was asking permission. This time, she just pressed record and let it happen. Hey. Her voice cracked immediately. She cleared her throat. I'm not doing this anymore, Marcus. I can't. I've been standing in our apartment for the last hour trying to remember the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, and I can't. I can't remember. She moved through the apartment while she spoke, the phone still recording. Past the dining table where they used to eat breakfast together, back when breakfast was a thing they shared instead of something they grabbed separately on their way out the door. Past the couch, where movie nights had turned into her watching alone while he answered emails beside her, his face blue-screened and distant. I know you'll say I should have told you, that we should have talked. But Marcus, I've been talking. For months. I've been standing right in front of you, and you've been... She paused in front of their wedding photo. The one where they looked stupidly, impossibly happy. Somewhere else, always somewhere else. The suitcase was already packed, sitting by the front door like an admission of guilt. She'd done it that morning while he was in the shower, moving quietly, precisely, like she was diffusing something that might explode if handled wrong. Every item a small betrayal. Toothbrush, phone charger. The sweater, he said, made her eyes look like whiskey in sunlight. He hadn't noticed what she was wearing in 6 months. I'm leaving the ring on your dresser. Her voice steadied, went flat. This was the part she'd rehearsed. I'm staying at Jen's. I need you to know this isn't about anything you did wrong. It's about everything you stopped doing right. She ended the recording. 23 seconds. As 7 years distilled into less time than it took to microwave leftovers. Sarah slipped her wedding ring off. It left a pale indent on her finger, a ghost of a promise, and placed it on his dresser next to the watch he never wore anymore because checking his phone was easier. For a moment, she almost picked it back up, almost convinced herself that one more conversation, one more chance, one more night of sleeping next to someone who felt 1,000 miles away would somehow be different. Instead, she grabbed her suitcase and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound so quiet it barely registered. No slam, no drama, just gone. Back in his office, Marcus's phone buzzed again. A reminder. Then another notification. Then a text from Jen. Call me when you get this. He swiped them all away without reading. The habit was automatic, efficient. Everything could wait. Everything always could. He had maybe 90 minutes before the meeting with Henderson, and these projections were still showing a shortfall in Q3 that would require explanation, justification, probably some creative accounting that would make everyone uncomfortable, but not quite enough to actually object. This was the part of the job he was good at, making problems look smaller than they were, buying time, pushing consequences into future quarters where they'd become someone else's emergency. His phone lit up again. He turned it face down. Across the city, Sarah sat in Jen's apartment, her suitcase still zipped, unopened. She stared at her bare left hand. It felt wrong and right at the same time, like putting on someone else's clothes and realizing they fit better than your own. "Oi, did he respond?" Jen asked, gentle. Sarah checked her phone. Nothing. Not even the read receipt. She laughed, but it came out broken. He hasn't even listened to it yet. At 5:30 p.m., Marcus finally packed up his laptop. The Henderson meeting had gone well. They always did. He was good at his job. Great at it, actually. That had to count for something. He pulled out his phone, already mentally cataloging dinner options. There was a voicemail notification. Sarah. Probably asking him to pick something up on the way home. He pressed play while unlocking his car. "Hey, I'm not doing this anymore, Marcus." His hand froze on the door handle. Chapter 4. The Shattering. The office is silent at 2:30 a.m., except for the hum of Min-jae's computer powering down. He loosens his tie, rolling his shoulders against the familiar ache of another late night. The merger documents are finally signed, delivered, perfect. Another win. Another night sacrificed to the empire he's building. He drives home on autopilot, mind already shifting to tomorrow's agenda. The penthouse is dark when he enters, which isn't unusual. Ji-woo always leaves a single lamp on in the hallway for him. A small kindness he's never thanked her for but has come to expect. He drops his briefcase by the door, the sound too loud in the stillness. The living room looks the same. Everything looks the same. But something feels wrong, like the air pressure has changed. He heads toward the bedroom, already rehearsing his quiet routine. Slip into bed without waking her. Maybe she'll curl toward his warmth in her sleep like she used to. Before the distance. Before he stopped noticing the distance. He pushes open the bedroom door. The bed is untouched. Perfectly made with the decorative pillows she always arranges just so, the ones he tosses aside every night. The sight stops him cold. Confusion flooding through his exhaustion. She never goes to bed without him anymore. She's usually asleep by 11, claiming she's tired, claiming she has an early morning, claiming anything to escape to separate rooms. But the bed hasn't been slept in at all. His gaze drifts to the nightstand and his heart lurches. The ring. Her wedding ring sits there, centered on the smooth wood surface with deliberate precision, not carelessly removed, not forgotten in haste, placed, a period at the end of a sentence he never saw coming. The room tilts. His hand finds the doorframe, fingers digging into the wood as his mind scrambles for explanations that won't form. She wouldn't. She didn't. This isn't his phone. The message. His hands shake as he pulls it from his pocket, nearly dropping it twice. The voicemail icon glares at him, time-stamped from hours ago, from when he was in that meeting, when he silenced her call because closing the deal was more important than whatever she wanted to say. It was always more important. He presses play. Her voice fills the silence, and it destroys him. Min-jae. She sounds tired. Not angry, not sad, just tired, like she's been carrying something too heavy for too long and finally set it down. "I know you won't listen to this until late. You're probably in a meeting. You're always in a meeting." There's a pause, and he can hear her breathing, can picture her holding the phone with both hands, the way she does when she's nervous. "I'm leaving. Not because I don't love you. I do. God help me. I do, but I can't be married to someone who isn't here, who looks at me like I'm just another item on a checklist he's too busy to complete." Her voice cracks, just slightly, but she steadies it. "I waited for you to see me, to remember me, to choose me just once over everything else, but you never did." His knees buckle. He slides down the door frame until he's sitting on the floor, phone pressed so hard against his ear it hurts. "I don't blame you for building your empire, Min-jae. I blame you for forgetting that I wanted to build it with you, that we were supposed to be partners, not strangers sharing an address." She takes a shaky breath. "I'm taking the job in Singapore. I'm taking the life I put on hold for 3 years waiting for you to notice I was drowning." The message should end there. He wants it to end there. But her voice comes again, softer now, almost a whisper. "Maybe one day you'll understand what you chose, what you lost. I hope it was worth it." The line goes dead. Min-jae doesn't move. Can't move. The phone slips from his fingers, clattering against the hardwood. The sound echoes through the empty penthouse, through the empty rooms of a home that was never really a home, through the empty space where his wife used to be. And then it hits him, all of it. Every missed dinner, every canceled weekend, every time he said, just this one deal, and meant, you're not my priority. Every time she smiled and said she understood when her eyes were screaming that she was drowning and he was the anchor pulling her under. The CEO who never breaks, who negotiates billion-dollar deals without flinching, who fires people without losing sleep. He shatters. The sound that tears from his throat is inhuman. Grief and regret and rage at himself pour out in gasping sobs that shake his entire body. He pulls his knees to his chest like he can physically hold himself together, but he's already broken. She's already gone. And the worst part, the part that makes him want to claw his own chest open, is that he has no idea when he'll see her again, or if she'll even let him try. The phone screen glowed 3:47 a.m. when Min-jae realized he'd stopped counting the calls. Somewhere between attempt 32 and 47, the numbers had blurred into a single, endless dial tone, a flat line of unanswered desperation. Sarah's voicemail greeting had become a form of psychological torture. "Hey, it's Sarah. Leave a message and I'll..." He'd memorized every inflection, every breath between words, the way her voice lifted on message, dropped on aisle. He'd dissected it like a man searching for hidden codes in static. Her friends were worse than silence. They were walls with eyes. "I don't know where she is," Melissa had said, her voice tight with protective fury. "She needs space," Jessica added before the line went dead. But it was Rachel who'd really twisted the knife. "Maybe ask yourself why she left Min-jae." Then she'd hung up too. He'd tried her mother next. Mrs. Chen answered on the first ring. She'd been waiting for his call, he realized, steeling herself for it. "My daughter," she said slowly, each word deliberate as a closing door, "doesn't want to talk to you. Please." I just need to know she's..." The dial tone cut through his sentence like a scalpel. Min-jae sat in his office as dawn bled gray light through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seoul sprawled below him, indifferent and enormous. And for the first time in his life, the view felt like a cage. Somewhere out there, Sarah had vanished into thin air. Somewhere beyond his reach, beyond his control, beyond every resource he'd spent his entire life accumulating. He'd tried everything. Called hospitals, checked flight manifests his assistant could access, monitored her credit cards, all inactive since she'd left. She'd planned this, carefully, methodically. The realization hit him like a fist to the sternum. She'd been preparing to disappear from him. The private investigator's number sat in his contacts for exactly 12 minutes before Min-jae broke. "Well, find her," he said when the man answered. "Money is not an object." 48 hours. That's how long it took. "Charleston, South Carolina," the investigator reported, his voice crackling through the speaker. "Small bed and breakfast on Queen Street. Checked in under her mother's maiden name. Paid cash. She's been there 3 days." Min-jae was already pulling up flights before the man finished talking. "Send me the exact address." "Mr. Park, she went to significant lengths to send it." He booked a flight for that evening. Then he sat back in his leather chair, phone in hand, and stared at his calendar. The Daewon merger meeting glared back at him in bold red letters. 3 p.m., final signing, do not reschedule, $3.8 billion, 6 months of negotiations, his father's pet project, the crown jewel of his legacy planning. The merger that would cement the Park family's dominance for another generation. Min-jae had sat through 47 meetings, smiled through countless dinners, reviewed thousands of pages of contracts. His father had called it the deal of the century. His hand hovered over the phone. Then he called his attorney. "Cancel the Daewon signing." The silence on the other end stretched so long Min-jae checked if the call had dropped. "Mr. Park, I don't think you understand. If we cancel now, I understand perfectly. Cancel it. Cite personal emergency. Offer to reschedule next month. Your father will..." "Tell my father I'll call him myself." He didn't wait for a response. The next call he made was to his assistant. "Clear my schedule for the next week. Everything. I don't care what it is." His phone rang 17 seconds later. Our father flashed across the screen. Min Jae answered. "Have you lost your mind?" His father's voice could have frozen magma. "Do you have any concept of what you've just done? The Daewon deal? I'm aware. Then get on the phone right now and I have something more important." The words hung in the air between Seoul and wherever his father was calling from. Probably the office, probably standing at that same window where Min Jae had watched dawn break over his crumbling world. His father had groomed him for 28 years, shaped him, molded him, built him into the perfect heir. Min Jae had never missed a meeting, never questioned a strategy, never said no, until now. More important than... His father's voice cracked with genuine shock. What could possibly be... Min Jae hung up. His hands were shaking as he set the phone face down on his desk. Outside, Seoul hummed with its endless, indifferent rhythm. In 6 hours, he'd be on a plane. In 14 hours, he'd be in Charleston. And then what? The question sat in his chest like a stone. What exactly was he going to say to the woman who'd loved him enough to destroy herself trying to fit into his world, and finally loved herself enough to leave? The humidity hit Min Jae the moment he stepped off the plane, thick, foreign, clinging to his skin like something alive. Charleston wasn't just warm, it was awake. Spanish moss hung from trees like forgotten prayers, and even the air seemed to hum with stories he didn't know how to read. He'd memorized the address, 412 Trad Street. White clapboard, blue shutters, old garden spilling over itself in a way that would have made his mother anxious. The kind of house that had been standing long enough to stop caring what anyone thought of it. His rental car idled at the curb. Engine off, hands still gripping the wheel. What are you doing here? The question had followed him across 3 states, through rest stops and gas stations, and one terrible motel with a light that buzzed all night. He'd asked it in every configuration, in Korean, in English, in the silence between exits when the highway stretched empty, and he could almost convince himself to turn around. But here he was, and there she was. Stephanie sat on the porch swing, legs tucked beneath her, a book open in her lap. She wore a sundress the color of lemon peel, nothing like the blacks and grays she'd lived in back home. Had her hair caught this afternoon light. She looked, he didn't have a word for it, unfolded maybe, like something that had been kept small for too long and finally had room to breathe. Min Jae got out of the car before he could think better of it. The gate creaked. She looked up. For a single impossible second, time seemed to split open. Her eyes widened. The book slipped an inch in her hands. He saw recognition bloom across her face. Not surprise, exactly. Something closer to disbelief. Or maybe wonder. He thought she might smile. Thought she might stand. Thought maybe, God, maybe, she'd come down those porch steps the way people did in movies. The way his heart had been stupidly, recklessly hoping. But she didn't move. "You listened," she said. Her voice was quieter than he remembered. Softer. I didn't think you would." Min Jae stood at the bottom of the steps, suddenly aware of how far he'd come, how little he'd planned beyond get there. "I needed to see you." "Why?" The question wasn't angry. It was genuine, open, and somehow that made it harder to answer. "Because He stopped, started again. "Because nothing made sense after you left, and I kept thinking if I could just talk to you, if I could understand." "You should go," Stephanie said. The words landed like stones. Not cruel, just final. "Steph, I mean it, Min Jae." She closed the book carefully, like it mattered, like she needed something to do with her hands. "You shouldn't have come here." He took a step forward. "Just give me 5 minutes, please, that's all I'm asking." Behind her, the front door opened. A man stepped onto the porch, tall, broad-shouldered, and moving with the easy confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was. He had kind eyes and a smile that hadn't decided yet whether to be friendly or protective. He wore a faded college t-shirt and carried 2 glasses of sweet tea like he'd been born doing it. "Everything okay out here?" His voice was warm, southern, the kind of voice that probably made everyone feel welcome at barbecues. Stephanie's expression shifted, not closed, but careful. "It's fine, Marcus." Marcus. The name hit Min-jae in the chest. He watched as the man, Marcus, handed Stephanie one of the glasses, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a gesture so natural it made Min-jae's throat tighten. Watched as she accepted it without looking away from Min-jae's face. Watched as Marcus looked between them, reading something in the air that Min-jae couldn't see himself. "This is Min-jae," Stephanie said. "From New York. He was just leaving." "Right," Min-jae heard himself say. His voice sounded far away. "I was just, leaving." Marcus extended his hand anyway. "Long drive from New York. You need directions back to the highway?" Min-jae didn't take the hand. Couldn't. His whole world had just tilted sideways and he was still trying to find his footing. "No, I'm good." He backed down the steps, nearly tripped on the bottom one, caught himself. When he looked up again, Stephanie was standing now, Marcus beside her, and the distance between the porch and the street had never felt wider. "Goodbye, Min-jae," she said. He made it back to the car, got in, turned the key. In his rearview mirror, as he pulled away, he saw them still standing there, side by side. And just before he turned the corner, Marcus's arm came up around Stephanie's shoulders. Min-jae drove 4 blocks before he had to pull over. His phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "I'm sorry you came all this way, but you need to let me go. S." Then seconds later, "Please." He stared at the messages until the screen went dark. When he looked up, he realized he had no idea where he was, or where he was supposed to go next. The invitation wasn't warmth. It was weaponized hospitality. "You'll come in," Grandmother said, already turning toward the house. Not a question. Never a question, with Southern women of a certain vintage. Min-jae followed, because refusing would have been worse, stepping into a living room that smelled like lemon polish and judgment. The kind of home where doilies had doilies, where every surface told him he didn't belong. She gestured to a floral armchair that had probably witnessed decades of family secrets. "Sweet tea?" "Thank you." He perched on the edge, spine rigid, while she disappeared into the kitchen. Through the archway, he could see Stephanie at the table, still holding their daughter, still not looking at him. Marcus stood nearby, one hand resting on the back of Stephanie's chair, casual, familiar, proprietary. The tea arrived in a glass so cold it sweated immediately. Leaving a ring on the coaster, Grandmother slid beneath it with pointed precision. She settled across from him, hands folded, eyes sharp as cut glass. "So, Seoul, was it?" "Yes, ma'am." The formality tasted strange in his mouth. At the office, people called him Sajangnim. Here, he was just some man who'd gotten her granddaughter pregnant. "Stephanie mentioned you work in technology." Her tone suggested technology ranked somewhere between snake oil and moral decay. "Venture capital. I invest in startups." "Marcus is military," she interrupted, as if he'd asked, as if the comparison was the point. "Served 2 tours. Just got his honorable discharge last month." Min-jae's fingers tightened on the sweating glass. "That's admirable." Known Stephanie since she was 16. Grandmother's smile could have cut diamonds. They were quite the pair, homecoming king and queen, voted most likely to succeed together. She paused, letting that together land. "Of course the military took him away, didn't it, sweetheart?" In the kitchen, Marcus shifted. "Miss Helen, I'm just making conversation. Innocent as arsenic in sweet tea. They lost touch for a while. These things happen. Young people, scattered to the winds." Her gaze never left Min-jae's face. "But real connection, that doesn't just disappear." Min-jae's throat felt tight. "When did he—" 3 weeks ago." She sipped her own tea, watching him over the rim. Stephanie came home in May, heartbroken, pregnant, scared. Each word a small knife. Marcus showed up in June, said he'd heard she was back. Just wanted to check on an old friend. Just wanted to check on an old friend. Through the archway, Min-jae watched Marcus lean down, murmuring something that made Stephanie's shoulders shake with silent laughter. The baby, his baby, reached up and grabbed Marcus's finger. He didn't pull away. "He's been here every day since," Grandmother continued. "Helped paint the nursery, fix the porch steps, sat with her through the hard nights when the baby wouldn't sleep. She set down her glass with a soft click. As a friend, of course. Of course. But Min-jae saw how Marcus looked at her, saw the way his hand lingered when he passed her something, saw how Stephanie's whole body seemed to exhale when he entered a room, like she'd been holding her breath until he arrived. Marcus knew she took her coffee with cream and 2 sugars, knew she hummed while she cooked, knew that her middle name was Rose, after her mother, and that she cried during sappy commercials, even though she pretended not to. All the things Min-jae had never bothered to learn. "He's good with the baby," grandmother said quietly, and for the first time, and her voice held something other than ice. "She lights up when he walks in, already knows his footsteps." Min-jae's daughter, lighting up for another man. He set down the tea, no longer trusting his hands. You should know," grandmother interrupted, "that we don't need anything from you. Stephanie has a job lined up at the elementary school. Marcus helps with childcare. We're family." That word again, sharp-edged. She's not alone. She never was alone, Min-jae realized with sickening clarity. I just made her feel that way. In the kitchen, Marcus was making faces at the baby, pulling exaggerated expressions that sent her into peals of toddler giggles. Stephanie watched them both, smiling, and something in her face looked lighter than Min-jae had ever seen it. She looked happy, without him. Yet the thought should have brought relief, absolution even. Instead, it felt like drowning. "More tea?" grandmother asked, already standing. But Min-jae was watching Marcus lift his daughter, into the air, watching her squeal with delight, watching Stephanie reach up to steady the baby with hands that trusted Marcus to never let her fall. And he understood, finally, what he'd actually lost. Not just Stephanie, everything. I stand at the edge of the Charleston property line like a man crossing into enemy territory, knowing full well I might not make it out alive. The fence post in my hand weighs next to nothing compared to the guilt pressing on my chest. I don't announce myself. Don't knock. Just start fixing the split rail that's been sagging since the storm 2 weeks back. Stephanie's truck is in the drive, but she doesn't come out. I can feel her watching from somewhere inside, though, that specific kind of stillness that comes when someone's pretending you don't exist. Day 2, I bring groceries, leave them on the porch. Milk, eggs, that fancy coffee she always loved but never bought for herself because she said it was too expensive. The bags sit there for 3 hours before the door cracks open and they disappear. Progress. Day 5. I'm replacing rotted boards on the porch steps when her grandmother shuffles out with 2 glasses of sweet tea, sets one down beside me without a word, doesn't offer it, just places it there like a test I might fail. I drink it slow, and she settles into the rocker, watching me work with eyes that have seen too much bullshit to be fooled by good intentions. "You planning on haunting us forever?" she asks. Just until I fix what's broken. Baby, some things stay broke. I hammer in another nail, harder than necessary. Maybe, but I have to try. She rocks in silence. The chains creak. Somewhere down the road, a dog barks twice and goes quiet. I show up every day after that, fix the gutter, patch the roof, oil the gate that's been squealing for God knows how long. Stephanie never comes outside when I'm there, but I catch glimpses, her shadow moving past the kitchen window, the curtain falling back into place a half second too slow. I'm haunting her the way she's been haunting me for 4 years, except I deserve this torture, and she never did. Week 2, her grandmother joins me on the porch as the sun bleeds out over the fields. She doesn't say anything, just sits in the rocker that was probably her mother's and her mother's before that. I'm perched on the railing, waiting for Stephanie to come home from work, even though I know she's been sitting in her truck at the end of the driveway for the last 20 minutes waiting for me to leave. "You love her?" The question lands like a punch. I've thought it 1,000 times, written it in unsent texts, whispered it to empty hotel rooms, but saying it out loud feels like signing something in blood. "Yes." She nods once, slow and deliberate. "Love ain't what you feel, baby. It's what you do, and you didn't do a damn thing for 4 years. There's no defense, no explanation that doesn't sound like an excuse. I've had 4 years to rehearse what I might say if anyone ever called me on my cowardice, and I've got nothing. I know. Then why are you here? Her voice isn't angry. It's genuinely curious. Like she's trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't quite fit together. You think showing up now makes up for the time you stole from her? The waiting? You think fixing a fence fixes that? I look at the house, at the warm light spilling from the windows, at the life Stephanie built without me because I was too afraid to build one with her. My throat feels like I swallowed glass, because I can't let her go without trying to be the man she deserved all along. The words come out raw, scraped from somewhere deep I didn't know still existed. Her grandmother studies me for a long moment, and I can't tell if she's about to tell me to get lost or give me something that might resemble permission. The truck engine finally cuts off at the end of the driveway. Her grandmother stands, joints popping, and moves toward the door. She pauses with her hand on the frame. That girl's been hurt enough, Minjae. You better be sure. The screen door bangs shut. Footsteps crunch on gravel, getting closer. I don't turn around. The rain started as a whisper. Minjae didn't notice at first. He'd been standing outside the dining room window for 20 minutes, maybe longer, watching the warm glow of the chandelier illuminate faces he used to know. 2 weeks of silence had carved a canyon between them, and now he stood on the wrong side of the glass like some ghost haunting his own life. Stephanie looked radiant. That's what killed him most, how she glowed from the inside out, one hand resting protectively on the small curve of her belly while she laughed at something Uncle Jin said. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, the way she used to wear it when they'd stay up late talking about baby names, and whose eyes their daughter might inherit. Marcus sat beside her, too close. Close enough that their shoulders touched when he leaned in to refill her water glass. Close enough that Minjae could see the ease between them, the familiarity. The whisper became a drum. Water soaked through Minjae's jacket, his shirt, plastering his hair to his forehead. He should leave. He knew he should leave. But his feet had grown roots in the manicured lawn, and his eyes refused to look away from the tableau of everything he'd destroyed. That's when it happened. Marcus said something Minjae couldn't hear through the glass, and reached over. His hand, large and certain, covered Stephanie's where it rested on her belly. On their baby. Minjae's baby. Yet Minjae waited for her to pull away, to create distance, to remember. She didn't. Instead, Stephanie turned to Marcus with this soft, grateful smile that used to belong to Minjae alone. Her fingers curled slightly, accepting the gesture, accepting him. The rain pounded harder, or maybe that was just Minjae's heart trying to break through his ribs. He must have made some sound, some pathetic, wounded noise, because grandmother's head turned toward the window. Her eyes found him immediately, like she'd been expecting him. Of course she had. She always knew. The front door opened, with a creak that cut through the storm. Grandmother stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm interior glow, her small frame somehow filling the entire space. She didn't invite him in, didn't step aside, just looked at him with those ancient, yet knowing eyes that had watched 3 generations of family drama unfold. She told me you'd come, grandmother said, her voice carrying that particular blend of pity and disappointment that only Korean grandmothers have perfected. She knows you too well, Minjae, even now. Hope fluttered weakly in his chest. Can I? She said to tell you something. Grandmother's hand tightened on the doorframe. She said, tell him I'm keeping the baby. The flutter became a spark. Minjae stepped forward. But I'm not keeping him. The spark died. Grandmother's face softened, just for a moment. She's moving forward, Minjae. You should too. The door started to close, but through the narrowing gap, Minjae saw movement. Marcus standing up, pushing his chair back, the whole family going quiet, all eyes turning toward him. And Minjae's feet moved on their own, carrying him closer to the window, even as the door shut with a definitive click behind him. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket. No. A small velvet box emerged. Navy blue, the kind that holds promises and forevers. The rain became a roar, but Minjae couldn't hear it over the blood rushing in his ears. He watched, frozen, as Marcus lowered himself. First one knee, then settled, his free hand reaching for Stephanie's. Stephanie's face, God, her face, transformed into pure, crystalline shock. Her other hand flew to her mouth. Around the table, Grandmother clutched Uncle Jin's arm. Aunt Miran started crying. Marcus opened the box. From this angle, through the rain-streaked glass, Min-jae couldn't see what was inside, but he could see everything else, the hope shining in Marcus's eyes, yet the tremble in Stephanie's fingers, the family leaning forward, holding their collective breath. Marcus's mouth moved, forming words that would change everything. Stephanie's lips parted, and the world went dark. Sometimes the consequences of our choices don't hit us until we're standing in the rain, watching through a window at the life we threw away. Min-jae learned that pride and stubbornness can cost you everything: your family, your future, even the person who loved you most. When someone shows you who they really are in a crisis, believe them. And remember, there are people like Marcus in this world, ready to step up and love what you were too foolish to cherish. The hardest truth? Some doors, once closed, don't open again. Not because you don't deserve forgiveness, but because the person you hurt deserves peace more. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.